Tilea's Troubles, Part 18. Bad Timing, Bad Intelligence and Bad Behaviour. Prologue to the Battle Report, Part 2. Upon the eastern coast of Tilea, Autumn 2401. Gurmliss had been frog-marched through the camp by two hulking orcs wielding viciously sharp choppers, both in the blue and grey cloth of Kernag's main battle regiments, one in stripes, the other in checks. Being forced by cruelly edged blades to walk quicker than his short legs were accustomed to was not what annoyed Gurmliss most, however. It was the jeering from every greenskin he passed. He was being treated like a coward. Worse than that, a coward who was about to receive his punishment. In truth, he had boldly, if anything too boldly, led his pathetic runt of an army, quite rightly called the Little Wag, against the Tileans, to test their mettle, probe them, discover their strengths, their weaknesses. And he had done so despite the fact that he knew full well his army would surely be defeated. He had understood throughout that he himself would most likely be killed, yet he had done so, despite the dangers, to obey his orders, and to learn something of great use to War Boss Gurmliss, and at no real cost to the main army. After the inevitable defeat, he escaped the massacre and rode northwards to report all that he had learned of the foe. Gurmliss listened, even thanked Gurmliss, and his real wag had begun its march south. Either Gurmliss truly relished the idea of fighting just such a foe, or he wanted his warriors to think he did. Gurmliss suspected the former, for Gurmliss would likely take great satisfaction in proving to the enemy that fighting orcs was a lot more painful than fighting a goblin army. Yet now, just when Gurmliss had finally decided he was going to avoid any form of punishment, something had gone wrong. Perhaps a rival had persuaded Gurmliss to reconsider Gurmliss's actions, or to see them in a new light. Or more likely, someone had been telling lies. He arrived at the orcs' main encampment to discover quite the crowd had gathered to watch the entertainment, mainly consisting of the Wags fighting orc regiments. His escorts prodded him forwards into the midst of a ring of glowering orcs, a good number of whom were scraping their steel chopper blades together to emit an eerie and ominous squealing, while the rest waved their hefty blades in the air threateningly as they growled and grimaced. Neither sight nor sound were reassuring at all. Gurmliss was standing within the circle, garbed in heavy iron plates from head to toe, with two of his goblin scout bosses by his side, looking quite pathetic amongst the mass of their bigger cousins. Gurmliss suddenly wondered just how pitiful a figure he must appear in the orcs' eyes, or would do if they knew what pity was. Gurmliss recognised the two goblins, and neither were what he would consider friends. The first was the army scout boss, named Drofter, who Gurmliss had once blooded in a squabble over a barrel of wine. The second, Jabble, he had chased from a Tilean's corpse so that he himself could loot it. War Boss Gurmliss was grinning, as ever, his fangs so large that they forced his lips into that shape. He raised his war axe and chopper together to silence the boys, then narrowed his already small eyes as he fixed them on Gurmliss.
"You said the gobbos are all dead," growled the war boss. "You said they were blown to bits. You lied. They've been found, sitting in Pavazzano just like we left them."
This was not one of the possibilities Gurmliss had entertained on his way here, not at all. It was impossible nonsense for a start, for he had witnessed both the goblins' march from Pavazzano and their subsequent massacre with his very own eyes. Nothing but a handful got away, their arms discarded, and hardly any had run back to Pavazzano, because that's where the enemy would go next.
"Who says the gobbos is still alive?"
Gurmliss asked, trying hard not to sound afraid. Gurmliss thrust his chopper at one of the goblins next to him, forcing the little fellow to jump back to avoid being sliced. Gurmliss laughed. praying that such apparent confidence would help turn the situation around. He looked the goblin scout boss in the eye.
"You saw Pavazano, did you? With the little wag in it?" Gurmliss said. "Where did you see it? Where exactly?"
The scout boss scowled. "Not more than 4 miles from here. Gobs and fences and engines and all."
Gurmliss laughed. "That ain't Pavazano, not if it's 4 miles away. Pavazano is leagues away, taking days to march to. You saw something else."
Grunts and snorts burst from the orc boys gathered all around. Scout Boss Drofter shouted his answer, trying to inject a tone of mockery into his words, but failing completely to hide his fear. "So you're saying there's 2 forts filled with gobbos on this here coast? I don't remember passing another when we came up north." He turned to his second. "Do you, Jabble?" Jabble's eyes went wide as he realised this meant he too had to speak in front of this somewhat unsympathetic crowd.
"No," he stammered. "There's no second fort. Just Pavazano."
Drofter grinned. "See? 1 fort. That's all there is. It's not me who's lying here. It's you. You ran away from Pavazano, and you made up all the rest." Once again Gurmliss laughed, though this time with less feigned confidence.
"It's you who's lying, and you're so thick you don't even know you're doing it."
Kernag grunted and raised his blood-stained axe and blade once more, which immediately silenced the arguing gobbos.
"We's got to get to the bottom of this, ain't we, boys?" he announced. "What a riddle, eh? Either there's a whole gobbo fort appeared out of the blue, or Pavazano was up and jumped along the coast umpteen leagues. Or brave Gurmliss here can't remember where he ran away from. I know which one I'd lay my gold shinies on."
A growling rumble of laughter rippled through the encircling orcs.
"Tell you what," the war boss continued, "'cos gobs is gobs, and they're all as useless as each other. I'm not going to decide who's right. Nah, I'll send you, Gurmliss, to the fort. If the naughty goblins there ain't ours, then they'll likely kill you. If it is Pavazano, then they'll kill you for running away before. Can't do better than that, eh? He's got 2 lovely choices. So take your pick, Gurmliss."
As the rippling laughter redoubled, Gurmliss stood with his arms crossed. The 2 orcs guarding him seemed disappointed. Perhaps they were looking forward to chopping him up into little pieces. Gurmliss scowled.
"I'll go as you command. I'll go and see who and what and where, and I'll come back with the truth, like I did before."
He glared at the 2 goblin scouts.
"Best I go if Despair can't even remember where Pavazano is or what it looks like. When I finds out how wrong they are, mighty Kernag, I ask only that I be the one to pluck out their lying eyes. They'll make a tasty treat boiled up with a bit of vinegar.